Greetings, and welcome to Today in Trek, our daily show about what has, is, and will happen in the world of Trek. It's January 5th, and our guest host today is Admiral Brondomom. And in keeping with the terrible weather that's predicted for the U.S. today, she's hosting the show from snowy Pryor's World. Well, one of the moons of Pryor's World, but you get the idea. Today's episode is brought to you by a cup of Bone Collector coffee from Grounds and Hounds Coffee, where every cup saves a pup. You can check them out at groundsandhoundscoffee.com. If you've got a favorite coffee vendor that also contributes to the greater good, let me know and I'll give them a try and a shout out. On to Today in Trek. Let's hit those birthdays first, and there are a lot of them for January 5th. Gilbert Ralston, writer of the TOS episode Who Mourns for Adonis, was born today in 1912. Actor Alfred Reiter, who played Dr. Robert Crater in the very first ST episode, well, the first series episode that was broadcast at least, Mantrap, was born in 1916. On this day in 1942, Cliff Potts was born. He played Vice Admiral Kennelly in the TNG 5th season episode Ensign Rowe, but is better known to some of us sci-fi nerds as John Keenan in the 1972 movie Silent Running. I'm going to go off the Trek track here and recommend this movie to those of you who haven't seen it. It's visually and technically beautiful, directed by Douglas Trumbull, with music by Peter Schickele. And if you didn't know already, Trumbull was a visual effects editor for 2001: A Space Odyssey, Close Encounters, and Blade Runner. It looks gorgeous, and it's a wonderful story. Greg Strangis was born this day in 1951. He was a staff writer for TNG in the first season and is credited as creative consultant on the episodes The Big Goodbye, Datalore, and Angel 1. Well, 2 out of 3. Can't win them all. Our 6 Degrees of Separation birthday celebrant for today is Clancy Brown, who was born this day in 1959. While he was featured in the first season episode of Star Trek Enterprise, in the episode entitled Desert Crossings, he's probably better known for his role as the Kurgan in the 1986 movie The Highlander, and as Sergeant Jim in 1997 Starship Troopers. Or maybe for his role as Rawhide in the cult classic The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension. Mr. Brown has worked with multiple Star Trek actors including Robert Picardo, Alan Ruck, Peter Weller, Christopher Lloyd, Robert Ito, Vincent Schiavelli, Jonathan Banks, Andrew Robinson, Will Wheaton, Neil McDonough, and Carl Urban, among others. Award-winning makeup artist Jill Rockhow was born this day in 1961. She worked on TNG, DS9, Nemesis, the J.J. Abrams 2009 Star Trek, and the fan production of Star Trek New Voyages. She was nominated for her work in the TNG episodes Identity Crisis, The Inner Light, and the DS9 episode Who Mourns for Morn, and won an Emmy for her work in the DS9 episode Captive Pursuits. Carl Tart was born this day in 1989. Mr. Tart provided the voice for Lieutenant Kayshawn in Star Trek's Lower Decks, along with other voices for the series, including Cor-D, a Borg snake, Sexagus, and the Omega Cube. Sokath, his eyes open. Other birthdays on this date include Keith Smith, Raymond Forchion, Brett Baxter Clark, Tim Lunabus, Leslie Dannon, Paul McGillian, Shea Wiggum, Michelle Parliak, I said that wrong, Michelle Paralak, Ryan Reeb, Michael Hoff, and Jamila Ross. In Trek series on this day, in 1967, the TOS episode The Galileo 7 premiered. A very early first season episode, it's one of the first, if not the first, episode that puts Spock in the role of leader of the shuttle Galileo that's forced to land on Taurus 2, then throws challenge after challenge at him that force him to examine his dedication to logic over the more human emotions that his crewmen embody as part of a good leader. It's a good story with great character development and some nice Spock, McCoy, Scotty interactions. It also puts Uhura in the position of science officer, another interjection of what I like to call presumptive clothes, that neither her gender nor skin color affects Kirk's decision to have her step into a different role, and that she absolutely is qualified to take on those tasks. It's atypical for how many television shows of that time handled women and or people of color in highly qualified positions. She does the job, and no one even thinks to question her abilities. But the question then becomes, if Uhura is qualified to jump from communications to science officer, meaning she's clearly been trained, Why isn't Spock as well versed in command? Okay, it's because we want to examine the human versus Vulcan approaches to decision-making processes and emotion versus cool hard logic. But you know what I mean. After all, this can't possibly be his first rodeo, so to speak. The Gamesters of Triskelion actually premiered on this day in 1968. Forget what I said about it being January 1st. The animated series episode Eye of the Beholder premiered on this day in 1974. Like many Star Trek episodes, the focus here is once again on the need for communication between species and, by inference, people, as a basis for understanding. The animated series, for those of you who haven't seen it, is a surprisingly good show. It's in an animated form, but the storylines are generally geared toward adults rather than children. It's worth a look if you haven't checked it out. But you're all Trekkies, so I'm sure I'm just preaching to the choir here. On a sadder note, on January 5th, 1990, voice actor Bart LaRue passed away. While he acted in 2 episodes of TOS, as the announcer in Bread and Circuses, and as a newscaster in Patterns of Force, he's more familiar to Trekkies as the voice of Trelane's father, the voice of the Guardian of Forever, the voice of Provider 1 in the Gamesters of Triskelion, and as Yarnek in The Savage Curtain. The archive recordings of his work as the Guardian of Forever were also used in the Discovery episode Terra Firma. Musician Clark Spangler died on January 5, 2001. While his work in television was extensive, Trekkies will remember him, with a touch of cringe, for his compositions in the TOS episode The Way to Eden. Many Trekkies will never be able to forget his songs Headin' Out to Eden, Looking for a New Land, and Hey Out There. Joseph Longo died this day in 2014. He was the property master for Wrath of Khan, The Search for Spock, the first 5 seasons of TNG, and all 7 seasons of DS9. Trek History of the Future, we're still in the countdown for Star Trek Section 31, 19 days and counting. The show will be on Paramount Plus in the States. If you have more information on what has happened or will happen this day in Trek, including streaming services that will be carrying Section 31 internationally, feel free to drop me a message or comment down below. And we'll see you tomorrow.